check this out.
What's this? You will discover a hidden talent for woodworking.
Uh-huh.
Think there's something to it?
Well, we're going to find out.
Okay.
Give me that thing. I'm going to take this hunk of wood, grab my rotary tools, and crank out some monsters.
Okay.
And I'm excited about trying this because, as you know, I've never done it. So we're jumping in here after I've already begun hewing basswood from the block with my Dremel flex shaft and a very coarse ball nose burr.
Are you going to list your tools in the info?
I can do that. However, while I'm more than happy to pass on whatever I learn here, let us recall that I am not an expert with this art form. I am not a professional. In fact, I am well below novice level.
Yeah.
Because, as I might have mentioned, I've never done it.
You're going to keep mentioning that?
Of course I'm going to keep mentioning it, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
As I switch out that ball nose burr for a very coarse taper burr, I don't have to remind you that this channel started with us trying things that we hadn't really tried before.
That's true. The sculpting, the watercolor.
Yeah, and I think that's a great way for people to find their passion, like to see if they do have any hidden talents and discover new ways of expressing themselves.
Very important.
So I don't mind putting my foot in it every now and then if it might inspire someone else to try something new and find their new passion.
Yeah.
They say a journey of 1,000 miles begins with one sketchy monster sculpt, I think, is what they say. Besides, most of the time, I think I do a pretty good job with the new stuff right out of the gate, I think.
I admit, you do manage to pull it off somehow.
Let me tell you how I manage.
I knew this was headed somewhere.
I think I'm what they call a savant.
You are not a savant.
No?
Not a savant.
I think many people are saying, I've heard, I'm a prodigy.
No one is saying you're a
prodigy. Is nobody saying that?
No,
no one's
not
saying
at all.
that. All right, maybe I just get lucky. I don't know.
Well, let's see if you get lucky this time.
Let's.
Okay.
At this point, I've switched out the coarse burr for a fine flame burr.
Okay.
And I'm thinking maybe I should run a poll in Patreon to see if maybe people want me to go over all of these bits and burrs and in detail.
Not a bad idea.
Right?
Might be helpful to go over your whole setup.
Well, actually, I will show you my whole rotary tool setup a little later in this video.
Okay.
But let's talk about this first monster.
Looks like a ghost.
A very simple sheet ghost.
Did you think it was simple while you were doing it?
Oh, absolutely not. I was hanging on for dear life. I was worried that I would slip and ruin it or injure myself.
As you do.
As I do. But, I just kept a good grip on the Dremel. I stayed focused, and I started carving out the flutes of the draped sheet. After that, I did a real quick rough sanding with a rotary sanding head just to see where I was at.
How are you choosing what tools to use?
Oh, well, there are a few channels that I've watched to bone up on this stuff.
Okay.
And some of these guys really know what they're doing. They know the tools, the techniques, and we will also talk about that later in this video because I want to make recommendations in case anybody watching wants to try this stuff for themselves.
Good.
Okay, so the next thing I grabbed was a fine sphere burr to dig out those eyes. And this part was kind of fun for me because now the ghost finally had a face.
Yeah, he's cute.
Yeah, it's a she ghost.
Oh, sorry, she's cute.
After this, I decided it needed a lot of hand sanding to take down all those lumpy bumpy contours that I didn't quite grind down with the Dremel. And then I'm thinking maybe a stain.
Okay. Wow, that's a lot of extra ghost there.
Yeah, and I saved it because we can use that in some other projects.
Oh, right.
All right, before I attempt to carve a zombie head, let me show you my Dremel setup.
Okay.
I have the power going through a foot pedal, and that way I don't have to keep turning the tool off and on by hand while I'm working. The power cord goes up past my Dremel Workstation, and on that workstation hangs, I think it's a Dremel 4300, I think.
Yeah.
And that's hooked up to a flex shaft cable. And that flex shaft cable leads down to the much easier to hold flex shaft handpiece.
Nice.
Yeah. And that dust collector is a filter that I have set up on the workbench to collect all of the sawdust that I'm kicking up with this project.
Yeah. So this is a similar piece of what? Basswood?
Yeah, basswood. Same size, same shape.
Okay.
And that's the same coarse ball nose burr that I hacked out the ghost with. And both projects started out about the same.
Okay.
Just grinding away at the sharp corners of this block, trying to get a softer curve. Because whether I'm carving out the ghost or this zombie skull, the top of this block has to be rounded off.
All right.
What I'm doing here is sketching out different reference points on the wood, like the bridge of the nose and the brow, the teeth.
Because you're not just going to dive in without having some sort of plan.
Right. Because I can't just erase my mistakes.
Carving's a little more permanent.
Yeah. And, I don't know if I've mentioned this, but I've never done this.
Literally won't stop reminding me.
Well, yeah. And also, even with the dust collector running,
Yeah.
I'm wearing a mask and goggles to protect my lungs and my eyes.
Good. So at this point, you're just going in and chunking out wood.
Well, first of all, it's called hogging it out.
Hogging, okay.
Apparently. But yeah, that's what I'm doing. And it's a little nerve-wracking. Honestly, I know it's just like a $3 hunk of wood. But I put in a lot of time learning the tools and the techniques, so I didn't want to screw it up.
Of course.
So what you'll see me do is cycle through different burrs,
Okay.
hog out some wood,
Yeah.
draw more reference lines on the wood, hog out more wood, shape it. And you walked into the workshop while I was doing this, and do you remember what I said?
Bring me the Band-Aids?
No, I didn't. Yeah, but I said that. But after I said that,
Yes.
I said I might be tossing out the whole project.
That's right. You said maybe we just use the ghosts in the video.
Yeah, because I had reached a point that most folks would call the ugly stage.
Yeah.
But I really wasn't sure that I was going to get past the ugly stage.
Right.
Nothing was working out the way I expected. And I was considering just throwing it in the bin.
Yeah.
My confidence was waning. But then I remembered something important.
What?
The fortune cookie.
Oh, the fortune cookie.
The fortune cookie
Of
said I was
course.
going to be good at this.
Yes.
But it wasn't just the fortune cookie.
Yeah.
I remembered that, sometimes you have to trust the process. There's often an ugly stage.
Yeah.
And you just got to push through it.
Yeah, and sometimes it still ends up ugly.
And that's fine.
Yeah, but that's how you learn a new skill.
Yeah, and learning new skills, improving on old ones, it keeps your brain sharp, it keeps the morale up
Yeah.
around here, it staves off boredom.
Right?
Somebody watching me hack away at this wood right now might feel confident enough to try to learn a new skill.
Yeah.
And learning a new skill could be a mild diversion to them. It could be career changing
Oh, yeah.
or even life changing, possibly.
Yeah.
In any case, it's something new, and there's always a little adventure in discovering something new.
Right?
Here, for instance, I discovered the zombie looked a little like an Easter Island head. Maybe a monkey. I don't know. Charlie the robot from Scooby-Doo.
Oh,
You know
yeah,
him,
it does,
right?
yeah.
At this point, it almost went right into the trash.
I'm glad it didn't, though.
So, a part of my learning process is observing other more experienced people work their craft. And I've watched a few different woodworking videos over the last few months.
You were absorbing knowledge.
Yeah, well, yeah, I mean, it's not fully absorbed, but I was trying.
Yeah.
And I thought that I'd mention a few channels where they really know their stuff, they know the tools, they explain things well, and if you want to get into power carving, you could do a lot worse than checking these folks out.
Yeah.
And I'll link these in the info. Logs Carving Club works a lot with rotary tools.
Yeah.
Does a lot of relief carving as well as carving in the round. And he talks a lot about what all the different Dremel burrs and attachments do.
I like his channel.
Yeah, it's got a lot of good information.
Yeah.
Another fun channel is Ryan Cook Carvin. The guy works in large scale.
Right.
Carving wildlife sculptures. Often starts with a chainsaw.
I'm just going to vote no on the chainsaw.
And I agree. But he also works with smaller rotary tools.
Yeah.
Talks a lot about different burrs and bits and does a lot of product reviews. So, solid channel.
Yes.
Also, Matt Carves is a channel that I always watch when he posts a new video.
Right.
He always works with rotary tools, talks a lot about why he's using which tool and which burr. He hands out a lot of information, and it's just a pleasant channel to watch.
I like all those channels.
The Matt Carves channel is where I first learned about these little T-shaped burrs that I'm using to slice in between the teeth.
I think all three of these channels have reviewed things that we ended up purchasing and liking.
Well, like I said, lots of valuable information. Oh, I did this for you. Is it safe?
Oh, no.
I don't
Is
know.
it safe?
I don't know what you're talking about.
Dustin Hoffman.
Exactly.
Marathon Man.
Yeah. He plays the same character he did in The Graduate,
Ben?
Ben.
Is Babe?
Is Babe. And he's just a few years later, and he's a grad student, with a Nazi dentist.
Right? Oh, Mrs. Robinson set him up.
Of course.
She's still angry.
Yeah, she's peeved.
It all makes sense now.
Yeah, puzzle pieces finally coming together. After the rotary tools, I do a little more detail work with some metal files.
Okay.
And those sanding sticks you got us.
Oh, those are good.
And regular old sandpaper. And this is because the burrs can only get you so far.
Right.
And the rotary sander can take you a little bit farther, but I really wanted to get into those tight spaces and soft curves and smooth things out before I do any staining or painting.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a quick look at these so far. Here's a little ghost.
She's cute.
Yeah, I got her smoothed down quite a bit with the sandpaper. I think I went up to 800 grit.
Okay.
Now, I don't know how well this wood will react to stain, but I think the stain might help highlight the contours of the sculpt.
All right. What about the Tarman?
Okay, well, I was aiming for a Return of the Living Dead Tarman zombie.
Yeah.
And he is, I'm not going to lie. It's not bad at all.
Right?
For a first time ever.
I know.
It looks like a head. The block was longer on one side than the other.
Yeah.
It wasn't a perfect square. So I tried to compensate for that. Is it comparable to Michelangelo's David? Yeah, I think so.
Do ya?
Is there room for improvement? Yes, of course there is. Of course. I think getting some stain on it will make a difference, but I kind of like it.
Honestly, I think you did a great job.
Let me tell you why I did.
If you
such
say
a great
you're
job.
a savant.
No, but I think experimenting with clay sculpting helped.
I can see that.
Like, even though clay is additive sculpting and this is subtractive,
Right.
I think messing around in other mediums is helping me think in different ways.
Okay.
So it all connects. And I think it proves 3 important things. 1, trying something new can be very rewarding.
Yes.
More people should do it.
Absolutely.
All the time.
I hope we encourage that.
2, watching YouTube videos can actually teach you new skills and maybe inspire you.
It's a great resource.
Right? And finally, and maybe most important of all,
Yeah.
fortune cookie fortunes are real.
Oh my
They're the
God.
real deal.
Right?
I don't know why this isn't being picked up by the national news.
We just broke a major news story.
It's a Pulitzer. That's
Yes.
a Pulitzer right there. All right, let's take a look at the final project.
I like this. I'm glad we ended up staining him. Her.
Yeah, I think it helps bring out the folds in her sheet.
Yeah. All kidding aside, I do like the Tarman zombie head.
Thanks. All kidding aside,
Yeah.
while I know there are many opportunities for improvement, I'm kind of surprised at how well it turned out for as inexperienced as I am.
Right?
That brains base was also my first ever relief carving.
Yeah.
And we made a how-to video for some of our Patreon supporters, so hopefully some of them will give it a try.
Do you have any other words of wisdom as a complete novice?
I'll say that I was very timid with this very first sculpt, the ghost.
Yeah.
I was afraid I'd ruin it. So if I had to make her again, knowing what I know now, feeling a little more comfortable with the tools,
Yeah.
I would plunge into it a little more dramatically and try to get more fluid curves and contours.
And Tarman?
Again, I wanted to stop midway through because I couldn't see through to the end.
Yeah.
And you shouldn't let fear make your decisions for you. It's not a perfect sculpt, but it's, likely better than it should be for a first time.
I think it's good to acknowledge you have a long way to go in your learning process.
Yeah.
And I think it's okay to be proud of your early efforts.
Yeah. And mostly, have fun.
Right?
I was nervous this whole thing was going to be garbage.
Oh, yeah.
But I also had a lot of fun trying out the different burrs and bits, seeing what kind of marks they make and how much or how little wood they carved out. So yeah, experimenting is important. And, as always, practice makes progress.
Yes.
Even though I had my doubts, even if I screwed up the zombie head beyond redemption, I would definitely put it in the video, at least for laughs.
Oh, I know.
You know?
I would have demanded it.
Of course.
Yes. This was fun. I liked watching it take shape.
Yeah, and I want to do more carving.
Good.
And I want to do it again soon.
Good.
I hope we inspired some people to just try something that they've always wanted to try, but maybe never did for some reason. And we'll keep doing that too.
And if we run out of ideas, we'll just order more Chinese food.
I am always up for that.
Good.